Keeping Quiet by Pablo Neruda. I am taking this lesson for you. I have already revised this once in a very quick manner, but let us go through it again. This is for our Phoenix group. We can go through it again in greater detail. Shall we go into to discuss who this poet is and who is Pablo Neruda? A little bit about the poet. Pablo Neruda is the original name of the poet. Is not the original name, rather. It is his, what we call the pen name is Pablo Neruda. His original name was Neftali Ricardo Reyes Masalto. Of course, it's a very long name. I think he thought he should shorten it. But that's not the only reason. The reason was he had a great admiration for the Czech writer Jan Neruda, and so he took half of his name, Neruda, and is known worldwide for his poetry, biographies, and memoirs. He wrote in Spanish, and it has been translated not only into English, but also to many, many languages. And he's awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1971. I think that would suffice to know about the poet. And this was not his career. He opted this career because of his love for literature. What is the central idea of this poem? Why is keeping quiet so important? This is what he analyzes in the poem Keeping Quiet. Because he's talking about how keeping quiet is the only way to bring about peace, bring about a sense of humanity, and bring about a self-realization of the human being. I feel it's very appropriate, this poem that we discuss now, when we are all in lockdown, sitting in the house, not knowing what to do. And why should we keep quiet? How do we utilize this keeping quiet time to not only to benefit us, but to benefit everybody around us? Because people are always very, very busy, trying to gain material advancement. I have to do better than my neighbor. I have to do better than my great aunt has already told me to have a great ambition in life. Whatever it be. But we don't give ourselves time to think as to what we are doing, whether what we are doing is what we want to do, and is running this race of catching up to something that we don't know what. Even nations are doing the same thing. They have, that is, the US has to compete with China, China has to compete with somebody else, India has to compete with somebody else. Every country is trying to compete with another and to outdo the other and to gain power over other nations. As a result, there's tremendous confusion in society and depression in people because they can never achieve what they imagine that it's an imaginary goal that they are seeking, and therefore there is depression in people. Poet seems to give us a very, very, very simple solution, and that solution is keeping quiet. Shall we see how he analyzes keeping quiet? Before we go into the text, as usual, I'd like to go through a few literary devices, the figures of speech that he uses. And why do poets use these literary devices? Because they want to, in a very concise form, poetry is very concise, not like prose, which can elaborate every meaning. So they have to package each word with a potent meaning. It has to have more meaning than the word as it appears to be. Therefore, they utilize these devices to give more meaning to the poem that they are writing. Poetry is always very, very crisp, very short, and very short sentences, they have a loaded meaning. So first I would analyze the word language. We all think of language as a language of Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, all the different languages. But what do they mean? This is an example of metonymy, in which the symbol, language is a symbol. Just imagine, I'm a Tamilian. What do I mean by that? My language is Tamil. I'm a Punjabi. What do I mean by that? I speak Punjabi. So the language gives my identity. And therefore, he's asking us to be using language as a symbol that which stands for not only what the person is, for the culture, for the race, for my background, for my community. As a result, every part of the world is identified by a language. Therefore, he wants us to identify the word. Language is not just one language, but the language of the many, and therefore there will be one language for all. Arms is the next word that he uses. It's a pun because you are having double meaning. Whenever you have double meaning for a single word, we call it a pun. Here the word arm could be your physical arm. It could be also weapons. So here he uses the word arms in a very, very precise manner in one of his the stanzas to mean that we don't move around our arms or we do not take up weapons. Both. We are quiet without moving, without making a disturbance or nuisance of ourselves to others. Also, we are not targeting others with arms. So this is a pun that he uses. Third one is sudden strangeness. Alliteration, I think you all are familiar with. When the same syllable is repeated in the first syllable is repeated in consecutive words, as in sudden strangeness. So the third one is, these are figures of speech, but here I have few more examples how he uses the other. Another alliteration is his hurt hands. Both are H ha ha ha. So his hurt hands. That's also an alliteration example. Another one is repetition of the same word. Palilogia is what is called. Here you have wars with fire, wars with gas, but both repetitive words of wars are repeated in two phrases following one of the other. This is another figure of speech called palilogia. Repetition of the same word in a line or sentence, and war occurs twice in that sentence, in that line of the verse. Here's the example of personification. Personification meaning that you give human qualities to something that is inanimate. Like the earth can teach us. How can the earth teach us? Earth is here personified as a human who has the capacity to teach. So this earth can teach us. Example of personification. And you already saw metaphor. I think in other poems I have referred metaphor. When we use a comparison, when we are going to appropriate a quality of one to another, not in relationship, but as itself. This can be found in the following lines. It's an extended metaphor because he's not stopping with just one metaphor. He says the earth can teach us when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Here the stillness which Neruda advocates is compared to the stillness of winter. And just like winter leads to rejuvenation or coming alive, even the quietness advised by Neruda leads to regrowth. So here is an extended metaphor of everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. He's alluding to the season of winter when nothing will grow and is covered by snow and we think everything is dead. But it is dormant. The power of the plant and power of the seed is there, dormant under the earth. But when certain conditions come, it flowers back or blooms back into life. Similarly, he says, at a point of stillness, we are in search of what we are, and therefore that energizes our soul, and our energy comes back after the period of quietness. That is the understanding of oneself. That is what Neruda is trying to allude here. Third one, or rather not the fifth one, I think it's symbolism. And many, many examples of symbolism here. The whole poem is symbolic. The fisherman and the whale stands for oppressor and the oppressed. Salt gatherer, people who work with their hands, humanity, working people. Clean clothes, symbolizing peace. The poem is written in favor in free verse. It's written in free verse and therefore has no rhyme scheme. So it is a free verse with no rhyme scheme. Here I have just one more example here which I have left out here. In the same fisherman and whale stands for oppressor and oppressed. There's a word saying cold seas. Why does he say cold seas? Because whales are found in cold seas. That's why he completes that line with saying cold seas, alluding that the life where the whales live in the Arctics. Also, that they are the oppressed, so we kill them for the blubber. You know, it is used in the manufacturing world. Therefore, this is a fisherman who is the boss, and the whale is its slave, almost signifying like that. Okay. Now shall we go to the poem? The first two lines, I think you have the poem in front of you. You can read those two lines, and I think I can explain after that. The first two lines goes like this. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. Why does he say we should count to 12? What is the significance of 12? There are three significances of this number given. One is because in psychiatry, whenever even a child, we say child is in tantrums, we say please count till 10, okay, count to 12. And so the counting distracts that mood in the mind and calms the child. Similarly, even in psychiatry, they use this to calm down a patient, asking them to count up to 12. Because the moment we start counting, we are no more in that mood of violence. Similarly, second one, or another alluding feature for number 12. Measuring of time is in a clock. 12 hours or another 12 hours to a day. Our day spent in work is 12 hours. So that is also refers to as time. In 12 hours sequences, we are losing time or using time of our life. And the 12 zodiac signs which regulate our destiny, our future. The zodiacs which control our lives that we believe. So the first two lines, and now we will count to 12 and we will still keep still. So after counting up to 12, we have to be in total stillness, total lack of movement. The next one, for once on the face of the earth, let's not speak any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak any language. As I explained earlier, language refers to the people of the world. Let us rise above the differences of cultural differences or racial differences or language differences or religious differences. Let us all speak in one voice or think in one voice. Let us all act in one voice is what the poet is asking us to do. The world, the earth, he refers to the world, and language to its people. So he believes that even if the world stops for a second, restlessness among people will reduce. And he's also suggesting with the word arms, physical calmness. We are not fidgeting. We are not restless, wanting to get up and move and do something all the time. We are calm, physically calm and mentally calm. And this calmness will also be a reason or rather a trigger to stop wars. That's why he uses the word arm as a double meaning. So bring world peace. withdrawal of arms by countries. That will bring world peace. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Means that everything will come to a standstill in peace. After industrialization and mechanization, those periods, people have become sort of dehumanized, according to him. We have become almost like robots living a life with no particular aim for ourselves. We are just imitating people, imitating countries, imitating the way others live, and think that is the way to live, or that is the way to achieve. So in that sense, because of industrialization and our availability of material and chasing of material goods, have made the society very greedy. Not only that, people have become very selfish, because we are all thinking of our own growth, our own peace, our own betterment, and not our neighbors. We are not in that process. We don't see how many people we are hurting on the way. So, according to Neruda, by keeping quiet, it will also start thinking of others. Am I the only one living on this earth? Is my neighbor okay? Is my grandmother okay? Even family, our aunt okay? Because we are all become so isolated in living within our own lives. We have not extended our thoughts to anybody beyond me. So he says that keeping quiet will make you think of others' needs. Not even whether you help them or not, at least think about it. Give a thought to others. And this way, you will feel a certain amount of energy within you, a compassion within you, which you have never experienced before. And this unusual movement, which is called exotic, this unusual moment we are living without these engines. Another word that he uses, engines meaning mechanized, rush, running in all directions, not of grabbing and aggrandizing and storing. These ideas will go out of your mind if you even be quiet for 1 second. At that point, we will have a strangeness, sudden strangeness, because we will start caring for others, which will make us think about others, and therefore we'll start caring for others. The next one is a fisherman in the cold sea would not harm whales, and a man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. This is a stanza for harmony. Harmony, how can we bring harmony in this world? Harmony, when we are able to feel for others, we are able to sympathize or empathize with others, then we have harmony. So long as we have the oppressed and the oppressor and the oppressed, this harmony cannot exist, because he's giving a symbolism here. What I told you, symbolism, something is represents something else, is a symbol. Like the lotus now has become a symbol of a political party, right? So any color has become a symbol of a political party. So these are all symbolisms that we forget. Lotus is a flower. Anybody remembers lotus is a flower? The moment the lotus comes up, you say, oh, this is BJP. So how these symbolisms impact our minds. Similarly, he says a fisherman is a symbol of a person who's capturing something which is natural in the ocean for his own good. Not that he's saying fishermen should not fish and eat. It's not that. It's the idea of whales. That's why he's talking about whales, not fishes. Whales are captured for industrial use, and therefore for such a growth of industry. And therefore, he is not talking about just common fishermen going down to the sea and fishing for their livelihood. That is not what he's talking about. He says fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales. Why will he go killing whales, or what they call, they use spears to kill whales. Therefore, and they will just, after removing what they want, they just throw it back into the sea. So this is, according to him, the horror of what the oppressed are enduring under the hands of the oppressor. The fisherman is a representative of the oppressor. And a man gathering salt would look at his herd. Everybody is working, 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 working. A man who is gathering salt, he is hurting his hands. Gathering salt is working with his hands, something that is a laborer working with his hands. And as he works, he is hurting his hands. He has no time to look at his hands. He has no time to treat his hands, to care for his hands. Why? Because he has to work. And so he says that moment will help him to introspect and see, is this what I want to do in my life? Is this the life that I want? Is there something else that I can do which is less hurting than what I'm doing now? These moments of silence gives time to introspect, meaning think about what you're doing. Think about what you want to do. We think about what is the way that you want to live your life. Not only will it make them understand themselves, it will also help them to understand the world around them. Man and nature is also signified here, because man is destroying nature in so many ways. So the fishermen and the whales as a nature. Salt is a symbol of the working class, I told you, and it will take time to think about the sufferings that they have endured, who have worked even through what is hurting them. And so a moment of silence will give them space to understand themselves and the life that they are leading. Those who prepare green wars with gas, those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. Green wars, that is a war against nature. War against nature meaning how man is destroying nature, forests, modernization, environment destruction, and global warming. All this is caused because of man's warring with nature, with forests, with the environment. Wars with gas, wars with fire, are all our global wars, wars with bombs. What at the end of it? At the cost, it is at the cost of human life. You know what the Holocaust was. You know what what happened at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Was anybody left there? Was any fruit of that whole exercise? Was there any human life left there for us to reap the joy of victory? None. If people would stop warfare, even for a moment, he feels the soldiers can become friendly, even across the border. If you are standing with guns on either side of a border, at some point of time, you will feel like removing all your blood-stained uniforms, wearing clean clothes, going across the border and shaking hands with your counterparts, and maybe enjoy an evening of quiet. And this, because why does this come? That moment of silence gives you that space to enjoy the moment of peace and the moment of kindness. Flowers in you. In a moment of silence, compassion flowers in you. That is what he's trying to say here. So there's a lot of benefit can be derived from the simple act of doing nothing. Doing nothing. Here's a very important word. What does he mean by doing nothing? Does he mean that I am to be dead like a corpse? Not doing anything? I'm not useful to anybody? What kind of life is that? Is what you will think. Let's see what he says to say. What I want should not be confused to total inactivity. He's clarifying your mind. You're saying keeping quiet. What? I'm alive. I cannot keep quiet. Activity is my signal for my living. If I'm not active, I am dead. But he's saying this, don't be confused. Total inactivity. Life is what it is about. You have to be active in life. That's how life is. I want no truck with death. I don't want you to be dealing with truck meaning dealing with death. This is not an act for you to say being dead is better than being alive. This is not what he's trying to say. So please understand, Do not be get it confused with total inactivity. Total inactivity is when nothing, not even your brain, works as in a dead. Physically, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, you're dead. Here, he's not talking about that. He's talking about an inner working, introspection, looking into yourself. That's an activity. And that activity can be done only when you withdraw yourself from the outer. He's giving a very, very philosophical idea of how silence brings the mind, calms the mind, and helps one to think about themselves. It's almost a sense of I teaching you how to meditate. That is what he's trying to tell me. Person who is meditating is not dead. He's totally alive. And when he's totally alive, he's very, very compassionate, because he understands what he is and what is his relation to outside the society or the environment. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, for once we could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt the sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. If we were so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, single-minded, so narrow-minded in that the actions and going towards achieving our goals, before I die I must reach this, before I die I must be able to do this kind of goals. The fear of death and the survival instinct is so strong in us that we can relate to stillness only with death. So whenever we are saying we have to still, we are thinking that it is only with death we can be still. That is a misunderstanding, because we are always wanting to be on the move. You stop moving means I am dying. He asserts that, he says that jumping into a pool of silence that he has created for us will bring an end to misery of never understanding ourselves. So he says, please retract into a pool of silence. Pool of silence, cool, calm, calming mind. Into that pool, retract, go back into yourself, and then experience the power of that silence, the power it can do to you. Most of us go through the world life without knowing who we are, or what we want, and the poet feels so sad. That's a sad kind of life, when you don't know who you are, you don't know what you want, you don't know whether what you're seeking is what you want. That is a very sad kind of life. So silence will help you to open up the happiness locked within ourselves. That is, our happiness is not in the external, but in understanding ourselves as we are is the internal. Because when we know ourselves, we can cope with both our negatives and our positives. When we never look at ourselves, we never know what we really are in our inner side of ourselves, because we don't ever want to look at it. But when we start introspecting, we also see that what we are really made of. And therefore, a point of correction, a point of change, point of understanding, or point of empathy, point of having consideration for others will evolve from understanding yourself. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I'll count up to 12 and you keep. So he comes back to that same stanza again to reiterate that we have to. Earth is teaching us. What is the earth teaching us? That in the illusion of death, there is life. Winter is the illusion of everything dying, but under it is life waiting to come out. So illusion of silence, death as silence, is a potential for life. Silence is potential for life. Stillness is potential for life. A living of a different kind. Different from what we have been accustomed to all these years. So he believes that apparent inactivity will eventually give us the growth and prosperity. The concluding lines, the poet leaves the scene. Having initiated the process of introspection and reflection within us, has sown the seed for a meaningful existence which will benefit both the individual and the society. He leaves us with these profound thoughts. The theme highlight seems to be stillness, silence, brotherhood, caring for others, and learning from nature. These seem to be the three highlighted points. Okay. In conclusion, I must say, though the poet is talking about keeping quiet and stillness, his thoughts are very explosive and shakes the fundamentals of what we believe as ourselves. So he's saying, keep quiet, keep still. Is that possible? Can we do it? Is it necessary? All these thoughts come into our heads. He creates, at least, if not giving us a direct remedy to what the life is like, he creates some ripples in our minds, thoughts in our minds. He's making us think. And he feels compelled to act on his mind, so that when we start thinking, the reader feels, okay, let me try. Let me do what he's trying to say. Through the poem, the poet doesn't seem agitated at all. He talks with such calmness. And what is he talking about? Everything that is not calmness, but he's giving the emotion of calmness through his poetry. Therefore, the reader is also compelled, saying, okay, maybe he has a message for me.